The porch light flickered, casting jagged shadows across Eli's face as he sat alone, staring at the empty street. At 18, he was a ghost in this sleepy Oregon suburb unseen, unheard. A boy who'd learned to shrink himself to fit the silence. I watched him from my window, heart twisting, knowing that kind of loneliness too well. My name's Caleb, 22. Back home after college flunked me out and life spat me onto my parents' doorstep. Their house, a faded blue Craftsman, sat across from Eli's, where he lived with a dad who worked nights and a mom who'd left years ago. I'd seen him around head down, earbuds in, always clutching a tattered journal like it was his lifeline. Tonight, though, something snapped in me. I couldn't just watch anymore. I grabbed 2 cans of soda from the fridge, crossed the street, and plopped down beside him on his porch steps. "Mind some company?" I asked, holding out a can. His eyes, a stormy gray, flicked up, wary but curious. "You don't have to," he mumbled, voice barely above a whisper. I shrugged. "I want to." And that was the start, small, unsteady, but real. Eli wasn't much for words at first. He'd answer in short bursts, like he was testing if I'd bolt. I didn't. We talked about nothing: music, the way the stars looked sharper here than in the city, how his journal was full of poems he'd never show anyone. I told him about bombing my finals, about feeling like I'd let everyone down. He listened, really listened, and I felt something shift, like I was the one being seen for once. Days turned into weeks, and our porch talks became routine. I'd bring snacks. He'd bring his journal, sometimes reading a line or two when he thought I wasn't paying attention. His words were raw, full of ache and beauty, and I started to see the world through his eyes, a place both cruel and hopeful. One night, he admitted he felt invisible, like he didn't belong anywhere. "You're not invisible to me," I said, and the air between us thickened, charged with something neither of us named. But this wasn't just about late-night talks. Eli was hiding something, and I could feel it in the way his hands shook when his dad's truck pulled into the driveway. His father, a burly man with a temper, didn't know Eli was gay. I'd figured it out from the way he spoke about love in his poems. Always guarded. I hadn't told him I was bi. Not yet. It felt too heavy, like it might break the fragile trust we'd built. One evening, as rain tapped the porch roof, Eli's voice cracked. "If my dad finds out who I am, he'll kick me out. Or worse." His fear was a living thing, clawing at the space between us. I wanted to reach for him, to promise he'd be okay, but words felt cheap. Instead, I handed him my old leather jacket. "Wear this when you're scared," I said. "It's like armor." He smiled, small but real, and slipped it on. It was too big, but he looked braver in it. Our connection grew, tangled and intense. I'd catch myself watching him write, his brow furrowed, and feel a pull I couldn't explain. He started leaving notes in my mailbox, lines of poetry, folded tight, like secrets. One read, "You make the shadows feel less heavy." I kept them all, tucked in my dresser drawer, wondering when we'd stop dancing around what was happening. Then came the night that changed everything. Eli showed up at my door, eyes red, journal gone. His dad had found it, read it, and thrown it in the trash. He called me a disgrace. Eli whispered, trembling. I pulled him inside, away from the rain, and held him as he broke. His sobs were quiet, like he'd learned to cry without being heard. "You're not a disgrace," I said fiercely. "You're the bravest person I know." In that moment, with his head against my chest. I knew we weren't just neighbors anymore. This was bigger, Messier, scarier, and more real than anything I'd ever felt. But as I held him, a cold truth settled in. Helping Eli feel seen might cost us both more than we were ready for. The next morning, Eli was quieter than usual, his eyes hollow as he sat on my couch, wrapped in a blanket I dug out of the closet. His dad's words had left bruises deeper than skin, and I could see him retreating, folding back into that invisible place he'd lived in for so long. I wasn't about to let that happen. I made us coffee, the cheap kind that tasted like regret, and sat across from him. "You don't have to go back there today," I said. He shook his head, staring at the mug like it held answers. "Where else am I supposed to go?" "Caleb. He's my dad." The resignation in his voice gutted me. I wanted to fix it, to storm across the street and tell his father what a coward he was for breaking his own son. But Eli needed me here, not starting a war. Instead, I suggested we get out of town for the day. "Just a drive," I said. "Clear your head." He hesitated, then nodded, slipping into my jacket like it was a shield. We took my beat-up Honda and headed toward the coast, the Oregon sky heavy with clouds. The radio played soft indie tunes, and for a while, we didn't talk, just let the road hum beneath us. At Cannon Beach, we parked near Haystack Rock, its massive silhouette looming against the gray sea. Eli wandered to the shore, his sneakers sinking into the wet sand. I followed, watching him pick up a smooth stone and turn it over in his hands. "I used to come here with my mom," he said, voice barely carrying over the waves. "Before she left, she'd tell me to make a wish on a rock and throw it into the ocean." He looked at me, eyes searching. "Think it works?" I shrugged, picking up a stone of my own. "Worth a shot." We stood side by side, tossing our rocks into the surf. I wished for him to feel safe, to feel whole. I didn't ask what he wished for, but the way he looked at me after, like I was the only thing keeping him anchored, made my chest ache. Back in the car, he opened up more. He told me about the first time he realized he was gay. At 14, watching a boy in his class laugh so hard he cried. "I wanted to be the reason he laughed like that," Eli said, blushing. I swallowed hard, fighting the urge to tell him he made me feel that way too. Instead, I asked about his poems, coaxing him to share one from memory. He recited a line about stars burning too bright to be ignored, and I felt it in my bones. When we got back, his dad's truck was gone. Eli tensed, but I walked him to his door, promising I'd be across the street if he needed me. That night, he texted me a single line, "Thanks for today." I felt like me again. I stared at my phone, heart racing, knowing I was falling for him hard. But trouble was brewing. The next day, I saw Eli's dad watching us from his window as we sat on the porch. His glare was cold, suspicious, and I knew he wasn't done with Eli's journal. Later, Eli told me his dad had started asking questions: where he'd been, who he was with. "He thinks you're a bad influence," Eli said, voice tight. "He doesn't even know the half of it." I laughed, trying to lighten the mood. But inside, I was scared. Not just for Eli, but for what we were becoming. I'd never been this close to anyone, never felt this responsible for someone else's heart. And yet, every time Eli smiled, every time he left a note in my mailbox, I wanted more of him, more of us. By the end of the week, things escalated. Eli's dad caught him sneaking back from my place late one night. The shouting woke me up, and I ran across the street, heart pounding. Eli was on the porch, his dad looming over him, face red with rage. "You think you can just do whatever you want?" his dad yelled. Eli's eyes met mine, pleading, and I stepped between them. "Leave him alone," I said, voice steadier than I felt. His dad's eyes narrowed, and for a moment, I thought he'd hit me. Instead, he spat. "Stay away from my son." Eli grabbed my arm, pulling me back, and whispered, "Don't. It'll make it worse." But as I walked away, I knew I couldn't stay out of it, not when Eli's safety was on the line. The air felt heavier after that night, like a storm waiting to break. Eli started avoiding the porch, texting me instead to meet him at the park a few blocks away. There, under the cover of old oak trees, we could talk without his dad's shadow hanging over us. But even then, I could see the fear in him, the way he glanced over his shoulder like he was being hunted. "I'm sorry about my dad," he said one afternoon, kicking at the dirt. "He's always been like this. But it's worse now." I wanted to ask why, but the answer was obvious. His dad sensed something, maybe not the whole truth, but enough to make Eli's life hell. I reached for his hand, just a brush of fingers, and he didn't pull away. That small act felt like a rebellion, a promise we hadn't spoken yet. We started meeting more often at the park, or sometimes at the diner on Main Street, where the coffee was better and no one cared who we were. Eli was opening up, showing me more of his world, his favorite books, his dreams of leaving this town, his fear that he'd never be enough. I told him about my own struggles, how I felt like a failure after college, how I was terrified of letting people down again. "You're not a failure," he said softly. "You're here. That's enough." His words hit harder than I expected. I'd spent so long feeling like I was drifting. But with Eli, I had a purpose. I wanted to protect him, to be the person he could lean on. But every time I got close, that fear crept in. What if I couldn't save him from his dad? What if I made things worse? One night, at the diner, Eli slid a napkin across the table. On it, he'd written a poem, short and sharp. "Your voice is a map / I follow it home / even when the world says I'm lost." I read it twice, my throat tight. "This is about me?" I asked. He nodded, cheeks red, and I felt the world tilt. I wanted to kiss him right there, but the diner was too public, and his dad's threats still echoed in my mind. Instead, I told him the truth. "Eli, I'm bi. I've known since high school, but I never told anyone here." His eyes widened, then softened. "I thought maybe," he said, smiling. "You look at me like you get it." That night, we walked home closer than usual, shoulders brushing, the space between us electric. But the closer we got, the more dangerous it felt. His dad started waiting up, checking Eli's phone, locking the door at night. Eli snuck out anyway, climbing through his window to meet me. One night, he showed up with a bruise on his arm. He grabbed me. He said, voice flat, said I'm not his son if I keep acting like this. I saw red, but Eli begged me not to confront him. "I just need you here," he said, and I held him until he stopped shaking. I started researching ways to help shelters, hotlines, anything to get Eli out if things got worse. But he was 18, legally an adult, and the system wasn't exactly welcoming to kids like him. I felt helpless, but I couldn't stop trying. I gave him a spare key to my place, told him to come over anytime, day or night. By the end of the month, we were stealing moments whenever we could, a touch, a glance, a whispered promise. One night, under the park's oak trees. He kissed me. It was quick, nervous, but it set my heart on fire. I've wanted to do that forever, he said, breathless. I pulled him close, kissing him back. And for a moment, the world was just us. But that moment didn't last. The next morning, I woke to a pounding on my door. It was Eli's dad, face twisted with rage, holding a crumpled note, one of Eli's poems. One he'd written for me. "You did this to him," he growled. "You're gonna regret it." Before I could respond, he was gone, and my stomach dropped. Eli wasn't answering his phone, and I knew we were running out of time. I sprinted across the street, heart hammering. But Eli's house was dark, the truck gone. His phone went straight to voicemail, and panic clawed at me. I called the diner, the park, even the library where he sometimes hid nothing. For hours, I paced my room, replaying his dad's words, that crumpled poem burning a hole in my mind. Had he taken Eli somewhere? Hurt him? The possibilities were a knife in my gut. By noon, I couldn't wait anymore. I drove to the police station, hands shaking as I explained. The officer was sympathetic but unhelpful. Eli was an adult. No missing persons report unless he was gone 48 hours. Family disputes happen, she said. Like that explained everything. I wanted to scream that this wasn't just a dispute, that Eli was in danger, but I had no proof. Back home, I found a note slipped under my door. Eli's handwriting. Shaky, "I'm okay. At the beach. Don't come yet. I need to think." Relief flooded me, but it was laced with dread. Why was he alone? What had happened? I wanted to drive to Cannon Beach right then, but his words stopped me. He needed space, and I had to trust him. I spent the day digging online for resources, LGBTQ+ shelters, legal aid, anything to help if Eli needed to leave for good. I called a hotline, and the woman on the line was kind but blunt, without money or a plan. Eli's options were limited. I felt useless, sitting in my childhood bedroom, surrounded by posters of a life that didn't fit anymore. That night, Eli texted, "Can you come now?" I was in the car before I finished reading. The drive to Cannon Beach felt endless, the road blurring under my headlights. When I found him, he was sitting by Haystack Rock, my jacket draped over his shoulders, staring at the waves. His face was pale, a fresh bruise on his cheek. "He hit me," Eli said, voice hollow. After he found the poem, said he'd fix me. I knelt beside him, rage and grief choking me. "You don't need fixing," I said, cupping his face gently. He leaned into my touch, eyes wet. "I don't know how to keep going, Caleb. I'm so tired." We sat there for hours, the tide creeping closer, as he told me everything, years of hiding, of pretending to be someone he wasn't, of loving in secret. I told him he wasn't alone anymore, that I'd help him find a way out. "We'll figure it out together," I promised. And for the first time, I saw hope flicker in his eyes. We drove back at dawn, Eli asleep in the passenger seat, my jacket still around him. I didn't know what came next, but I knew I'd do anything to keep him safe. When we got home, his dad's truck was back. Eli froze, but I squeezed his hand. "You're not going in there alone," I said. He nodded, and we walked to my place instead. The next day, I took him to a local LGBTQ+ center I'd found online. The counselor, a woman named Maria, listened as Eli spilled his story. She talked about emergency housing, job programs, ways to start over. Eli clung to my hand the whole time, and I realized how much he'd come to mean to Minute, just a neighbor. Not just a friend, but someone I couldn't imagine my life without. But his dad wasn't done. That night, he left a voicemail on my phone. Slurring and angry. "You're ruining him. I'll make you pay." I didn't tell Eli, not wanting to scare him more. But I knew we were on borrowed time. We needed a plan fast. I started looking for apartments. Somewhere far enough that his dad couldn't reach us, but close enough that Eli could still feel like he had a home. As we sat on my couch, planning our next steps, Eli leaned against me, his breath warm on my neck. "I don't know what I'd do without you," he whispered. I kissed his forehead, heart full and terrified. We were in this together, but the world outside was closing in, and I wasn't sure how much longer we could outrun it. The next week was a blur of planning and fear. Eli stayed at my place, sleeping on the couch, while I worked odd jobs to scrape together money for a deposit on an apartment. My parents, thankfully, were out of town, giving us a temporary safe haven. But every creak of the house made Eli jump, and I could feel the weight of his dad's threats pressing down on us. We found a small studio in Portland. Affordable, but a stretch. Maria at the LGBTQ+ Center connected us with a program that could cover part of the rent for a few months, giving Eli time to find a job. He was nervous but determined, talking about maybe enrolling in community college, studying poetry or art. Seeing him dream again, even a little, made my heart swell. But dreams didn't stop reality. One morning, as we packed Eli's things from my place, his dad showed up. He banged on the door, shouting Eli's name, and I felt the blood drain from my face. Eli froze, his bag slipping from his hands. "Stay here," I said, trying to sound calm, and went to the door. His dad was a mess bloodshot, fists clenched. "Where's my son?" he demanded. I stood my ground, heart pounding. "He's safe. That's all you need to know." He lunged forward, but I slammed the door and locked it, calling the police. They arrived quickly, but his dad was gone by then, leaving only a shattered flower pot on the porch. Eli was shaking when I went back inside. "He's never going to stop," he said, voice breaking. I pulled him into my arms, promising we'd get through this. But I was scared, too scared of what his dad might do. Scared of what this was costing Eli. That night, we moved what little we had to the Portland studio. A cramped space with peeling paint, but a lock that worked. Life in the city was different, louder, faster, but freeing. Eli got a job at a bookstore, his eyes lighting up when he talked about the poetry section. I picked up shifts at a coffee shop, and we fell into a rhythm, cooking cheap meals together, laughing over stupid TV shows. At night, we'd lie on our thrift store mattress, talking about everything and nothing. He'd trace patterns on my arm, and I'd kiss him until we were both breathless. But the past wasn't done with us. One evening, as we walked home from the bookstore, I noticed a truck following Ushy's dad's. My stomach dropped. I grabbed Eli's hand, pulling him into an alley. "We need to go," I said, but Eli was paralyzed, his face pale. "He'll find me anywhere," he whispered. I called Maria, who told us to come to the center. There, she helped us file a restraining order. It felt like a flimsy shield, but it was something. She also connected Eli with a therapist, someone to help him process the years of fear and rejection. Watching him take those steps, I was proud but terrified. I couldn't protect him from everything. One night, as we sat on our tiny balcony, Eli turned to me. "I love you," he said, Simple and sure. My heart stopped, then raced. I love you too, I said, and we kissed, the city lights blurring around us. It was the first time I felt like we might actually make it. But the next morning, I found a note taped to our door, "You can't hide forever." No signature, but I knew who it was. I didn't tell Eli. Not yet. I wanted him to have one more day of feeling safe, of feeling seen. But as I held him that night, I knew we were on the edge of something bigger, something that could either save us or break us. The note haunted me, but I kept it from Eli, tucking it into my wallet like a secret I could control. We were building something fragile but beautiful in our little Portland apartment, and I didn't want his dad's shadow to ruin it. Eli was starting to smile more, his laughter filling the space between us. He'd read me his new poems, ones about hope and love, and I'd listen, falling deeper every time. But the fear was always there, lurking. The restraining order didn't stop his dad from circling. I'd see his truck sometimes, idling at the end of our street, or catch a glimpse of him outside the bookstore. Eli didn't notice he was too busy healing, growing into himself. I didn't want to take that from him, but I started keeping my phone charged, ready to call for help. One afternoon, Maria called. She'd heard from a contact that Eli's dad had been asking around, trying to find our address. "You need to be careful," she said. I thanked her, my stomach twisting. That night, I told Eli we should start locking the windows, even on the third floor. He looked at me, eyes narrowing. "You've seen him, haven't you?" I couldn't lie. I showed him the note. Eli's face crumpled, but he didn't cry. "I thought moving here would be enough," he said. I held him, promising we'd figure it out. The next day, we went to the police again, but they could only take a report, nothing concrete, unless his dad violated the restraining order directly. It felt like we were waiting for a bomb to go off. We tried to keep things normal. Eli started a poetry workshop at the bookstore, and I'd watch him read, his voice steady and strong. He was becoming someone new, someone who didn't shrink anymore. But I could see the strain, the way he'd check his phone or glance at the door. I hated that his dad still had that power over him. One night, we went to a local open mic, Eli's first time reading in public. He was nervous, his hands shaking as he stepped to the mic. But his words silenced the room. He read about love, about surviving, about finding light in the dark. When he finished, the crowd erupted, and I clapped until my hands hurt, tears in my eyes. He was shining, and I was so damn proud. But as we left, I saw him, Eli's dad, standing across the street, watching. My blood ran cold. I grabbed Eli's arm, steering him back inside. "We need to go out the back," I said. He didn't argue, his face pale. We slipped through the kitchen, out into an alley, and ran to the bus stop. On the bus, Eli clung to me, his breath uneven. "I just wanted to stop," he whispered. Back at the apartment, I bolted the door and checked every window. Eli sat on the couch, staring at nothing. "I'm dragging you into this," he said. "You don't deserve it." I knelt in front of him, taking his hands. "I'm here because I want to be. Because I love you." He kissed me, desperate and fierce. And for a moment, we were untouchable. The next day, I called a lawyer Maria recommended. She helped us strengthen the restraining order and talked about long-term options, maybe a new city, a fresh start. Eli was hesitant, but I could see him considering it. "I want a life with you," he said, and I knew I'd follow him anywhere. But that night, the bomb went off. I woke to glass shattering a brick through our window. Wrapped in a note, "You're mine. Eli." Not his. Eli screamed, and I pulled him to the floor, dialing 911. The police came, but his dad was gone again. They promised to patrol more, but I knew it wasn't enough. We couldn't stay here, not anymore. We didn't sleep after the brick. Eli sat curled on the couch, my jacket around him, while I boarded up the window with cardboard and duct tape. The police had taken the note as evidence, but their promises of patrols felt hollow. I knew we had to leave Portland not just for safety, but for Eli to finally breathe. By morning, we were packing. Maria helped us find a temporary place through a network of LGBTQ plus safe houses. This one in Seattle. It wasn't permanent, but it was a start. We'd have a room in a shared house. Support from others who'd been through similar things. Eli was quiet as we boxed up our few belongings, but he nodded when I asked if he was ready. "I trust you," he said, and those words carried me. The drive to Seattle was tense, both of us checking the rearview mirror for his dad's truck. We didn't see it, but the fear lingered. In the safe house, we were welcomed by a couple named Sam and Riley, who showed us to a small room with a twin bed and a desk. Eli set his journal new, bought with his bookstore paycheck in the desk, a small act of claiming space. Life in Seattle was a slow rebuild. Eli got a job at a cafe, and I found work at a community center, teaching art to kids. We were broke but happy, finding joy in small things, walks along the waterfront, late-night talks about our future. Eli's poems grew bolder, full of defiance and love. He started submitting them to journals, and when one got accepted, we celebrated with cheap wine and a dance in our tiny room. But healing wasn't linear. Some nights, Eli woke up gasping, nightmares of his dad chasing him. I'd hold him, whispering that he was safe, that we were together. Therapy helped, but it was slow. I struggled to guilt over not stopping his dad sooner, fear that I wasn't enough. But every time Eli smiled, every time he kissed me like I was his home, I knew we were worth fighting for. One day, Maria called with news. Eli's dad had been arrested for violating the restraining order. He'd shown up at our old apartment, drunk and yelling, and the police caught him. It wasn't a long sentence, but it was a reprieve. Eli cried when he heard, not from fear, but relief. "Maybe I can stop running," he said. We started talking about staying in Seattle, building a real life. Eli enrolled in a community college, taking writing classes, while I saved for a better apartment. We made friends at the safe house, people who understood what it meant to fight for who you are. At a group dinner one night, Eli raised a glass and said, "To being seen." Everyone cheered, and I squeezed his hand, my heart full. But even with his dad behind bars, the past wasn't gone. Eli got a letter from his mom, out of the blue. She'd heard about everything, wanted to reconnect. He stared at the letter for hours, unsure if he could trust it. What if she's like him? He asked. I didn't have answers, but I promised to be there, whatever he decided. As winter set in, we found a tiny apartment of our own, just a studio with a view of the city. We painted the walls blue, hung Eli's poems like art. One night, as snow fell outside, he read me a new one. "You found me in the dark / and taught me how to shine." I kissed him, slow and deep, knowing we'd built something unbreakable. But deep down, I knew the fight wasn't over. His dad would be out eventually, and Eli's mom was still a question mark. We'd face it together, but the future felt like a tightrope. and we were learning to walk it one step at a time. Spring came to Seattle, soft and green, and with it, a sense of possibility. Eli was thriving. His poems were published in 2 more journals, and he'd started a blog, sharing his story with others. I watched him grow, not just into a writer, but into a man who believed he deserved to be loved. I was still at the community center, painting with kids and dreaming of opening my own art studio someday. Together, we were carving out a life, one we hadn't dared imagine back in Oregon. But the letter from Eli's mom lingered. He'd written back, cautious, asking questions but not committing. She lived in California now, remarried, and claimed she wanted to make things right. Eli wasn't ready to meet her, but he kept her letters, reading them when he thought I wasn't looking. I want to believe her, he told me one night, curled against me. But I'm scared. I held him, promising we'd face it together, just like everything else. His dad's release date was approaching, and we braced for it. The restraining order was still in place, extended after his arrest, but we knew it wasn't foolproof. Maria helped us install a security system in our apartment, and we made a safety plan: emergency contacts, a bag packed just in case. Eli hated it, the reminder of his old life. But he didn't shrink anymore. He was stronger now, and so was I. One sunny afternoon, we went back to the waterfront, where we'd walked so many times. Eli brought a stone, smooth and gray, like the ones from Cannon Beach. "I'm making a wish," he said, tossing it into the water. "Not for me this time, for us." I smiled, pulling him close. "What did you wish for?" He grinned, a rare, full smile. "You'll see." That night, he gave me a gift: a new journal, his handwriting on the first page, for Caleb, who saw me first. Inside were poems, dozens of them, all about user porch talks, our fights, our love. I read them through tears, overwhelmed by how far we'd come. "I want to spend my life with you," I said, voice breaking. He kissed me, whispering, "We already are." A week later, Eli got a call from his mom. She was in Seattle, asking to meet. Against my instincts, I encouraged him to go, but only if I could be there. We met her at a quiet cafe, and she was nothing like I'd expected: small, nervous, with Eli's gray eyes. She apologized, cried, said she'd left because she couldn't handle his dad's anger. Eli listened, his hand in mine, and when she finished, he said, "I want to try, but it's going to take time." It wasn't forgiveness. Not yet. But it was a start. As summer approached, we got word that Eli's dad had moved, left Oregon for good. It wasn't closure, but it was breathing room. Eli started talking about the future: maybe grad school, maybe a book of his poems. I dreamed of my studio, of a home we'd build together. We weren't naive. We knew the world could still be cruel, that not everyone would accept us. But we had each other, and that was enough. One evening, on our balcony, Eli read me a final poem. "We are the light / that no shadow can hold / together we rise." I pulled him close, the city glowing below us, and knew this was our truth. We'd started as 2 lonely souls on a porch, but what we'd built was a love that could withstand anything: a love that saw, that healed, that endured.